Oh, I think we should start.
Okey-dokey.
Welcome, everybody. This is Taking the Essence, Integrating the Practice of Freedom into Our Daily Lives. This is a condensed presentation of the teachings of Buddha, or the lamrim, or the stages of the path to enlightenment. We have Eddie Peet with us today, and if you haven't taken one of his classes, you're missing out. He has a way of just getting right to the bottom of things. So thank you, Eddie. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Shana. And welcome, everybody. Lovely to see you all again. I'm glad we're all still alive and we can partake in the teachings of Dharma. It's a wonderful thing and sort of rare too. So let's begin as we normally do. We'll start with a meditation. We'll take refuge together and generate the mind of enlightenment, and then we'll begin the actual course. So please get comfortable in your seat. Have your back straight and your shoulders relaxed. And you can either close your eyes or keep them open, whatever feels most comfortable for you. When you are comfortable in your seat, continue to breathe normally and naturally. And while you're breathing normally and naturally, notice what's going on within the body. So there'll be movement and feeling that you can experience each time you inhale breath or exhale the breath. And by noticing these movements and acknowledging the feelings that are associated with them, the mind is becoming focused. And as the mind is focused, the body is beginning to relax. And it's from within this relaxed state that we can imagine the appearance of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. They're appearing above your head and they surround you. You can see that within the center is Shakyamuni Buddha, and surrounding him are other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, solitary realizer arahats, and Dharma protectors. And we're going to take refuge in these realized beings to bring about the understanding of their teachings, the holy Dharma, and for us to become fully awakened beings ourselves so that we can help others attain this liberated state, the state where we have the perfections of body, speech, and mind, and we can effortlessly help others attain these. So please join me in saying, I go for refuge until I am enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So in response to this aspiration of ours, lights and nectars pour out of the heart of the Buddha, and they wash over us and all the beings surrounding us. Whatever hindrances and obstacles we might have to taking genuine refuge are now washed away. We find that our mind is completely open and receptive to the teachings of the Buddha and his community. We recollect all the beings who surround us. We recollect them with these four immeasurable thoughts. So we say, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is without suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And again, lights and nectars pour out of the heart of the Buddha, washing over ourselves and all the beings surrounding us. We find that all obstacles and hindrances to these four boundless thoughts have vanished. And the mind is completely open, non-biased, pervaded with joy, love, and compassion. We recollect the field of merit above us, and it's with devotion that we say, reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. Now, just in case there's any sort of clinging to the idea that we exist independently from everybody else, and that these merits truly exist, we can recollect emptiness, and seeing that our body has no true existence, have it transform into a world system. I think it's in this pure environment that I wish to give the teachings, that may all beings abide within this pure environment. And I'm going to offer it to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So we say, this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnaryatayami. So we've released the offering, and the Buddha has accepted it with delight. And we look up at the Buddha, we see that he's looking at us. So we see a sense of compassion and genuine acceptance within his eyes, and we feel completely at ease. In an emanation of the Buddha, a replica leaves his heart, and it moves through space, and it comes to abide above the crown of your head. It's facing in the same direction you are, and then it begins to descend, entering the crown of your head, coming down through your body, resting at the level of your heart. Its radiance begins to expand, filling your body and mind with light. And this light goes out through the pores of your skin, filling the 10 directions of space. And wherever beings abide within space, this light touches them and utterly transforms them, bringing each and every one of them into the fully awakened state. Then the light rays, which include the vast panoply of living beings who are now Buddhas, all come back and re-enter your heart. You find yourself breathing normally and naturally. You know you're sitting on a seat. You feel embodied. And you recollect that this is a meditation that's been carried out on the level of imagination, and it has imprinted your mind with causes and conditions to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of others. So you accept that with a sense of joy. And while you're breathing, pay a little bit more attention to the inhalation of breath. And a little more forcefully exhale the breath. And in your own time, allow your eyes to flutter open. Move your fingers, your hands, and your shoulders and legs. Move whatever you wish to. You feel quite aware and awake, and you know you're sitting in front of your screen and you're about to engage in the class. So again, welcome everybody. So as you know, we've been going through this course called Embracing Freedom, and our focus has been primarily on this topic called renunciation. And as you know from last week, renunciation is a definite decision to be free of samsara and to gain liberation. In fact, it marks the entry into the Buddhist spiritual paths, and it takes place in stages. Today we're going to be looking at what's called pure renunciation, and we can also look at how it's completed. Now, to help me present the class, I've relied upon these books and some of the material from it, and of course quite a lot more. But I just thought I'd put these up because they're really all the material in here. There's aspects of it that really focus on this topic called renunciation or definite emergence. And just as last week, I've used the same quote. So I just want to say it again. And you can see here I've highlighted the second section in red because we're going to be focusing on that part. So it says here, if you are attached to this life, you're not a true spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you do not have renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If grasping arises, you do not have the view. Now, last week we talked about a sort of renunciation in terms of the first part, saying that if you are attached to this life, you are not a true spiritual practitioner. So the renunciation there was a much smaller type of renunciation, and it was really focused on renouncing rebirth in the lower realms. So we wished to avoid that form of suffering. We found ourselves still in samsara, but nevertheless we could keep on engaging in a spiritual path. Whereas today we really want to tackle the attachment to samsara so that we can actually have a genuine form of renunciation. And again, this is a slide from last week, but just to remind us what renunciation actually is. So you can see here it's a determination to be free from samsara and achieve liberation. So these two are the most really important parts: free from samsara and achieve liberation. And how do we do that? By giving up true suffering and its causes. And this is based on the belief and knowledge in the possibility of having a true cessation and a true path. Because this is what actually frees us from the clinging to samsara. Now, samsara is this. It's described in a number of different ways, but this is one of the ways. So samsara is the cycle of rebirth of the contaminated and appropriated aggregates, which occurs under the control of karma and affliction. So karma and affliction are the true origins, and samsara, this term samsara, contains what are called the true sufferings. We talked about the true sufferings last week, and this week our focus will be mainly on karma and affliction, and how we could renounce these two. So this picture in the middle shows us the afflictions. So they're sort of personified here by these, the wild boar or the pig, and in his teeth he holds the tail feathers of a pigeon, and the pigeon is holding in its beak the tail of the snake. So the wild boar or the pig is a symbol for the ignorance of true grasping, or the ignorance of inherent existence, so the ignorance that grasps onto reality to exist in the way it appears to us. The pigeon represents attachment, and the snake hatred. So these are the afflictions, the major three afflictions that are churning the wheel, so to speak. And as the wheel turns, we have on one side white karma, or virtuous actions that produce an upward rebirth. And on the other side, with the black side, sort of the falling down into the lower realms that comes about through the unskillful actions that we do, the unskillful karmas, which are being driven by these three in the middle, the afflictions. So I'm just going to spend a little time talking here on these things here, the karma and the affliction.
Eddie, just before you go on, did you say that the three things in the middle are turning the wheel, or they're churning the wheel?
Churning the wheel.
Churning, right. That's what I thought, because that's a fantastic way to put it.
Yeah, you can see why sometimes the artists don't have these three animals holding, the tails. Sometimes they are apart, but sometimes they're together to show their interrelationship between ignorance, attachment, and hatred. So another name that they use for affliction, so afflictions are sort of like a wide way of talking about afflictions, the many of the different things. But there are another term for affliction is called delusion. So the delusions or the afflicted mind states. So we talk about delusion, there's a definition for it, and it's this. So a delusion is a mental factor that arises from inappropriate attention and it functions to make the mind unpeaceful and uncontrolled. So this is a sort of a general definition which applies to all of the obscuring afflictions, sort of like as a class. But basically, it's saying that an affliction is an internal mental event, and its nature is to make the mind restless, unpeaceful. So it's uncontrolled. And this sense of being uncontrolled and unpeaceful is arising independence of what's appearing to the mind. So you have some sort of object that will appear to the mind. This mental factor is aware of that. So the mind is aware of it, but the way it's aware of it is wrong. This is what this term inappropriate means. So the object is appearing, like let's say, for instance, the person appears, but the attention given to it is in a sort of a wrong way. And this will make the mind unpeaceful and uncontrolled.
Eddie, I have a question. This is Erin.
Yeah, Erin.
How are emotions connected to this?
So
Eddie, just stop the share while you're giving the answer.
Sure. Okay, Erin. So in terms of the what we term emotions, so now a way of explaining things, we can have sort of positive emotions and negative emotions, I guess. And in the Tibetan traditions, the way or the Buddhist traditions, they talk about them in terms of negative mental states and positive mental states. So when they talk about the negative mental states, they're talking about the afflictions, which is what we would probably talk about as harmful or unpleasant emotion.
Okay.
So that's a sort of a general sort of thing, because there's another way we could talk about the emotions in terms of motion that the mind makes, and that's another sort of or another presentation, so to speak.
Great.
So is that a little bit useful for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So please, just as Erin has done, Susan or Sally, anyone else, please, if something comes up and you're unsure or you just want a bit more explanation, just do what Erin did, just speak up. I'll do my best. Okay, so let's have a look. So I've got this. This is how we're defining these delusions, and there are three major ones, as we saw with the figures of the pig, the pigeon, and the snake. So with the pigeon, it's being symbolized by attachment and greed. So I think it's quite a good metaphor, isn't it, or analogy, or even a symbol for attachment. Because if you've ever seen pigeons eat and watch them, it's like they're always going for something, and it's like continuous sort of pecking, dropping things, picking a new thing up. So along with this attachment, these are some of the other terms for them. So this is a desire, but this is a particular form of desire. It's called like a deluded desires, because not all desires are attachment. We've got craving, grasping, and probably the worst manifestation of this delusion is called lust. The next is called anger. We've got aversion, intolerance, hostility, and hatred. And I've tried to go sort of making hatred the worst, then hostility leading to hatred, coming out of intolerance and just a sense of aversion. So moving from sort of light to heavy. And in terms of ignorance, there's just a sort of sense of being confused. So the word confusion is often used in the Nyingma tradition and the Kagyu tradition, but they're really talking about this ignorance. The more deeper form of it is called ego grasping or self-grasping ignorance. So these are what they call the three root delusions, or the three major afflictions. And of course, these afflictions, or these sort of mental states, are engaging objects. And when they engage the object, an activity is taking place both through the engagement with the object and then what will follow from it. So when we engage, this is what we're talking about with karma. And one of the worst things about how these afflictions work and the activities that follow is that we're unaware of the consequences of that. And many of these are really hidden from us, and they only take place much later on. So here I've just sort of said this, that our happiness and security, which we're always seeking, they cannot be achieved through aggression and greed. So the aggression and the greed, of course, are the afflictive mental states, and they're producing some sort of activity. And here the activity, as you can see in the picture, is the activity of warfare, aggressiveness of trying to take from others what they have. And why I particularly took this picture to have death on the shoulder of this soldier here. So although he tries to take the lives of others through the doing of it, he actually shortens his own life, or puts his own life in danger.
So, Eddie, this is a real thing about how short-term our view is, because on a short-term view, I mean, we do have wars and countries are invaded and power does change hands, but I mean, and that seems to dominate rather than this bigger view that there are going to be, I mean, there's going to be consequences because there's generations that then hold grudges and then come back and invade back. But the karmic view as well, it's so hard to keep it in your mind when the most immediate thing is that people do achieve the power that they're desiring through war.
Yeah, and as you'll see later on, it's a sort of a false power, because at the same time, over time, what you've done is you've actually weakened so many things to do with your own life and how you live your life and what will happen to you. So on one level, it looks like strength, and that's a mere appearance. But in fact, what you've done is weakened your own sources of happiness and how you will experience happiness in the future. So it's through this ignorance of karma and the consequences of it, the impacts, which have been driven along by these delusions. What they do, when you put them together, they produce what we call true sufferings. So the three which contain everything, it's just a very simple way of putting it. So we've got to call the dukkha of misery, but here we could see that it's there's a little picture of a person breaking their ankle. From the other side, it's just the fact that you're in a trench with a rifle and you are suffering in that trench and creating suffering for other people. That's sort of like obvious pain. But then we have this is not so obvious, it's called the dukkha of change, is that even though you are successful in these things, like Miffy pointed out, yes, you might win the battle, you might win the war, you might kill your enemies. That success doesn't last very long. In fact, it's very deceptive. So here I want to show this deceptiveness of thinking, oh wow, great, a cake with strawberries on it and cream, which is something I really like, and you think, oh great, I really love it, I really enjoy this and like it, and but it brings like a long-term suffering that you're not aware of as you eat the cake. When you eat the cake, it's really pleasant. For me, that's still the case. It's very pleasant, but the long-term effects of it will not be. So I know it'll have a big impact on my health if I were to engage in eating sugary foods like I have done up to the present. And then just the fact that we have this body and mind, that we have a body and mind that is conditioned by karma and delusion. So we are sort of receptacles for suffering. So these what are called the true sufferings or true dukkha. The deepest form of this is this dukkha of conditionality. The most
So
deceptive
Eddie's
of it is this one, dukkha of change.
Eddie, the dukkha of conditionality, is that that one where we think it should be possible to say live a human life without any illness. You know, that's we're thinking that should be the norm, and illness or breaking your ankle, all of those things, they're all aberrations that
Yeah,
shouldn't
that's
happen.
right. Yeah. So we need to look at this and see actually they're not aberrations at all. But these are real possibilities that can take place at any time in our lives.
And they're kind of built into having a
The fact that
body.
we have a
That's
life,
yeah.
the fact that we're living this life.
So this example then also the dukkha of change. I mean, I look at that and I just think, oh my God, what hope do I have? Because the thing about food, it's brilliant, because if, like, I've got allergies to some food and yet I still eat it. And it happens, it's not like a long-term thing like karma that the result happens in the next life. The result happens within half an hour and I still can't get it.
Yeah, well, this just shows how strong the karma and delusions are. You know, the sense of confusion and forgetfulness.
Eddie, how is the dukkha of conditionality different from the dukkha of change? I don't quite see the difference. It seems like when you enter a new condition, that is a situation of change.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So the dukkha of conditionality contains the dukkha of change and the dukkha of misery.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So this is the big one. And here all we've done is just sort it out, go, all this, how about obvious pain? Of course, that's really unpleasant. But then this one here is really dukkha of change really has to do with the pleasant things, the things that we call goodness and happiness. But as we know, the goodness and the happiness is not under our control. It changes. So I'd like to do just a very brief and short reflection on what we've covered. So just you're going to. It's okay. Just keep your eyes open, closed, whatever. It's just a reflection, just something to think about. So we've looked at true sufferings. We focused on those last week. We've briefly mentioned them today in the true sufferings of misery, change, and conditionality. And these produce what they call the true origins. Well, the true origins of suffering are karma and delusion. Now, these true origins, as you can see, are two, karma and delusion. Of the two origins, delusion is primary. Thirdly, because delusions are the main obstacles to attaining liberation or freedom from samsara, right? They are known as obstacles to liberation, delusion obstructions, or afflictive obscurations. So three different names for this phenomena called the delusion. Now, because they destroy our mental peace, they are called the inner enemies. So these, we can talk about our outer enemies and our inner enemies. Outer enemies, you can make friends with them, you can change them in some way. These ones, that's not going to happen. You have to actually sort of get rid of them. They always create suffering. Those are, like I said before, they always disturb the mind. So just as Miffy pointed out before, and I sort of hinted at about, so my big thing is like cream cakes, for instance, anything that's got sort of cream on, and especially strawberries, I'm attracted to them, and I immediately think, oh, that's going to be a real pleasurable experience. Miffy has different types of allergies and so forth, and yet that doesn't stop her eating the food or drinking the drinks, and then within half an hour or so still experiencing suffering. And this is all because these objects we think are pleasurable objects that naturally produce pleasure within us. So this is a big mistake. This is where we're confused. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, so this is not just for Miffy and I, of course you might recognize this in yourself, and you might also know other people that suffer just like Miffy and I. The Lama Tsongkhapa says in relationship to this, seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. So I remember our teacher, Kintsa Rinpoche, said, he said, look, we have no
Stop the share,
problems.
honey. Stop the share while you're talking.
We have no problems renouncing the causes of pain and pain itself. But we have a great deal of difficulty renouncing the causes of what we call ordinary happiness, which are actually the dukkha of change. And as Lama Tsongkhapa said before, these pleasures are uncertain. It's uncertain whether they'll actually produce the pleasure you seek in them. And so they can't be relied upon.
Eddie, I have a question.
Sure, Susan.
When we say, bless me to generate the strong wish for liberation, who are we asking to bless me?
Basically ourselves. We're asking out to recollect what we remember. So we're saying that, please, like, bless me, have my mind change so I remember this. And my wishes for happiness, for the bliss, the pleasure, go in the right direction and not the wrong direction. It's basically, we're just reminding ourselves, Susan. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the, but remember again, it's not just ourselves, because in a way, like, the mind cannot be destroyed. So we've had wonderful teachers like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the Buddha himself, Lama Tsongkhapa. So their consciousness is not, gone out completely. So we're sort of saying, so all those beings who have ever generated the mind of renunciation, like help me. And like the Buddha said, look, the freedom you seek, you're going to have to do it. These other people can help you, and the books you read can help you, and listening can help. But that help will not be enough. We'll have to exert ourselves.
But I really like that, Eddie, of calling on all those who have successfully generated the mind of renunciation, rather than calling on anything else. That's the thing to call on, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're convinced that somebody else has done this, that it's possible to do it, and somebody else has done it, and you sort of say, well, then, I'm a human being, I've got a mind, it's just really based on the mind and exerting effort to do it. And it's sort of like reminding yourself, just as you have done it, may I be able to do it too.
Eddie, I think that's a really beautiful view. It gives us so much potential. We're reminding ourselves, we're asking ourselves to bless ourselves. That's really a profound thing way to look at it, you know?
Yep.
It's very practical. It's very, well, it's very spiritual.
Yeah, as you're saying, I can just feel a sense of joy coming up inside me, Susan, going, yeah, that's right, that's right. It's just like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you remember in the 37 practices of bodhisattvas where Todme Tulku talks about how trying to be satisfied with samsaric pleasures is like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. Yeah, and you just can't get enough of it. And actually, it doesn't ameliorate your thirst; it makes you more thirsty. Yeah? And so, the quenching of thirst by drinking salt water, you can't rely upon it. So when we have this, as you said, Susan, please bless me. Please bless me. You're saying, through my consideration of this and agreement with it, please let me have a mind changing, so that now I seek the bliss of freedom rather than the bliss of sponge cake, the bliss at the bottom of the glass of alcohol. May all my wishes be met. So when we come up with that idea, and believe it and sort of want it, this is really pure renunciation. And so it's like having seen, and this is how it comes about, you see the faults and the shortcomings. And seeing that, wish to abandon it. Going, okay, it just doesn't work. It's like that thing of going, although I'm thirsty, drinking salt water is not putting it into my thirst. I'm not going to drink salt water anymore. Even though I wish to be happy, when I drink alcohol, I get some sort of allergic reaction to it. And it doesn't actually produce the happiness I'm seeking. So I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to find something more useful. Liffy. Yep.
I was just wondering, like in psychology, sometimes you talk about a sublimated wish or a sublimated urge that comes out in some skewed way. So with this real yearning for renunciation, is it right to think about it as, instead of yearning for the chocolate cake or the sponge cake, we don't squash our yearning down, we just put our yearning towards something
They'll
that's
actually
valid?
deliver. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So that so that it's not a sublimated yearning anymore, but it's actually got somewhere to go.
Yeah, that's right. It's yeah. So if you look back over your life, you've probably always found you've had a sense of yearning for something.
Yeah.
It's just that it's been driven. We've just taken and been encouraged to take other objects to satisfy it, but we haven't been satisfied.
So, because I always just thought like renunciation is then having no yearning.
No. It's no. The yearning's important.
And here, because you're saying it's a really strong wish, so actually that makes a lot more sense to me now, because then you can turn the impetus of that yearning, if you can turn it into the right direction with your wisdom, then now suddenly you've got a huge amount of impetus in there, energy.
Yeah. So that's what we call path. That's the path. Once you have that, when you have this, you've now entered a path. So if you have this, you've entered the Buddhist path. Up to this point, you sort of haven't, but you're in the direction, you're going that way. But to have it's just this idea of working out what does work and what doesn't. And primarily here, you've worked out what doesn't. And you've gone, okay, this doesn't work. I'm not doing that anymore. And although I don't have this complete freedom yet, through my study and through my understanding that other people are free, then I want to be free too. And we just find, like the method is not hidden from us. All we have to do is, the method is there. It's just for us to start applying it. And what you find quite interestingly is that it's a sort of a discovery model. It's not like you've got to make something new or anything. It's removing something and seeing more clearer. So Miffy and I went out. I don't know, Miffy and I didn't. I did. I was invited out by Miffy's good friends to a jazz concert. Yeah, and the singer sung that Nina Simone song, "I Wish I Knew How It Felt to Be Free." You know, and those words, that's a really touching song to me. You know, because I said, yep, okay. So when she sung it, of course, you're talking about the slavery that had been imposed upon the Negro race in America and throughout the world. And I thought, yeah, that's one type of freedom, but there's also the mental freedom. So you could have physical freedom and still find yourself imprisoned. Yeah. So it's this greater freedom that we're seeking. If we look at ourselves and acknowledge, when we're not free, I'm not free. So what's holding me back? What imprisons me? The answer's confusion and my mind being not under my control. Sort of doing what it wants to, what we call karma, habitual responses to situations, and I'm suffering. So as things being all changeable, something can change. I'm going to start changing my way of thinking and being in the world. I want to be free. We have that idea, now we're on a path. We don't let that idea go. It's so certain for us that it's a sort of sense of disgust and being fed up with doing actions that weren't under our control, just driven to do things. I wish I knew how to be free. So this is the thought, right? The pure thought, freedom. This is led by this pure thought. Mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. So this is great. When I read this, I'm still getting goosebumps again reading it. It's like the root of my desire is to keep the vow I have to be free. So please bless me to accomplish this essential practice of seeking freedom, becoming free, and knowing what hinders, what gets in the way by using mindfulness and alertness. So as you know, if you've read some of the stories of freedom, when there was the Freedom Express, the railroad, the Freedom Railroad in America, with the people trying
I think
to
it's the
escape.
Underground Railroad.
Underground Railroad, right? So great caution, so you're not caught by what's pursuing you. So what will continue to pursue us, of course, is karma and delusion. Right? They're not going to let go just because we want to be free. So we've got to sort of be aware, okay, this is how I'll be hindered. This is how I'll be stopped. My emotions are going to get in the way. But when they do, I've got to recognize that that's going on now. That's going to take, hang on.
I like this
promised
too,
myself to be free.
Eddie, because then it's like we're not identifying with our emotions. We're being super cautious about our emotions, and they might come in and wreak havoc, but not thinking that that's me.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, that's quite right. When we're not our emotions, or what we call disturbing emotions or afflictive mind states, they just rear up. They don't last very long. We've got to be careful not to follow them when they sort of rear up. To be very cautious then, because they are quite strong within us. And because we've followed them, then we've got the habit of following them. And now habits, as you all know, if you've ever tried to break a habit, it's not easy. So being very cautious about that, acknowledging, this is the habitual response I normally have. Hang on a minute, but it doesn't produce what I want. I can't follow it. Take a couple of deep breaths, try to relax the body and mind, and we'll go. And so and even just doing that, we have some freedom, a little liberation. So I'll do a little meditation now. So again, just get comfortable in your seat. Think, well, I'm going to have a little think about this now, what Eddie's going to say. I'm just going to think about it. I'm just going to listen and follow along. So get comfortable. We recollect that it's ignorance which leads to exaggerating the importance of beauty or ugliness or any other quality. Exaggeration of these qualities will lead to lust, to hatred, to jealousy, to becoming belligerent, and so on. And these emotions, which are destructive to us, lead to actions which will be contaminated by that misperception. These actions, or karma, furthermore, lead to powerless birth and rebirth in cyclic existence, and the repeated entanglement in trouble. Removing ignorance undermines our exaggeration of positive and negative qualities. This undermining of exaggeration will undercut the lust, the hatred, the jealousy, the belligerence, and every other disturbing emotion. And this will put an end to the actions contaminated by them. This will put an end to the actions contaminated by this misperception. Thereby we stop powerless rebirth and birth in cyclic existence. So the way out is through insight. Insight is the way out. Insight into the ignorance, insight into the karma, which will produce what we call samsara. So just breathe in now. Okay, I've thought about that. I heard those words. I'm just going to put that there and hold it and think about it. Now, the great Arya Nagarjuna says this, that freedom will depend on you alone. And there's no one else, no friend can help. Bearing study, discipline, and concentration, bring diligence to the Four Noble Truths. So in fact, there are other people that can help us, and like I'm trying to help. Lama Zopa has been trying to help. All the people in the lineages have been trying to help. But as you know, the help is not so great that they can go, right, no problem, you've got renunciation. The help is not that great. It's like they help by telling us again and again and again and encouraging us. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the same. They have books written for us to read and so forth. But doing all that, this is the thing we call study, isn't it? Bearing study. I have to listen to this again and again and again. I need to read material again and again. I need to contemplate it, think about it. And then I've actually got to do it. I've got to sort of discipline my behavior. And of course, if I wish to get insight into this, to hold the insights, I'll need to concentrate my mind. Nevertheless, that this idea of being liberated from suffering is an aspect of the Four Noble Truths. This is what the Four Noble Beings, the beings who were noble, discovered by following the Buddha's teachings. So when we engage in this wish to become free from samsara, we are engaging in practices what they call of the middle. So we're middle level practitioners, and our aim here is to achieve liberation or freedom. It's also called nirvana, and once we achieve that state, that's an arahat. The person who's achieved a liberation from cyclic existence, which was dependent upon renunciation and insight. So what did this person practice? What are they encouraging us to practice? Well, these three higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Now they're called higher because the goal is higher. It's liberation and freedom. It's not a good rebirth within cyclic existence where we can continue on with our practices. We need to achieve that if we don't achieve this. But this is, like I said, this is the way to get out of cyclic existence altogether. So what they eliminate through their practice are these afflictive obscurations, or as you asked before, Aaron, these sort of disturbing emotions, the emotions that afflict our mind. So these emotions that afflict our mind have causes. These are called the seeds. And some of these seeds are, this like karma, which has been polluted by our confusion, our misunderstandings, which bring about rebirth in samsara.
So Eddie, that's quite a big point, because even though we have a rebirth in samsara, we have a pretty extraordinary rebirth. So it's like something's gone right, but also something's gone really wrong. And so what's gone wrong is this polluted karma. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and what's right about it is that we have a way out. We have the body and the mind of the human being, and the senses that can understand these teachings and bring about freedom. So it's like finding yourself in jail because you did something wrong. But while you're in jail, you've got recourse to the library and teachers and so forth, and you can get out. Thank goodness. So I remember Lama Zopa saying, talking about actually a man in prison who wrote to him and said, "Oh yes, you're in that prison, but there's a much larger prison, the prison of samsara, and that's the one you want to get out of." Yeah. So what do we have to? We've got here what we practice. These three higher trainings of ethics, and what we are to eliminate. What brings about this wish to do all this? So here it's understanding the first two truths, what we call the true sufferings, true dukkha and true origins. We've looked at that and going, okay, oh my God, that's what's afflicting me. That is my prison. These are the origins for my imprisonment, and this is my imprisonment. And I want to get out. I want to get out. So we need to tunnel our way out. The way out is through, like I said, insight. really look into this. Like, how do these things exist? How did they come to exist? Bring about a cessation of our suffering. And again, it's just, so what do I do? How do I, okay, I want to get out. What do I do? So, well, we actually engage in the practices of these 3 higher trainings. So we keep the ethics that we talked about last week, the restraint from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. We restrain ourselves from engaging in those 10 behaviors. But we also bring into it insight. So we ask ourselves, how do these types of sufferings exist? Who is suffering? When I do something, how does that doing exist? I need insight into these, but I understand from my study that the major thing the problem here is just being confused. And my deepest confusions are about myself and the situation I find myself in. So I need some insight into that. To bring up this insight, or the result of the insight, is called a true cessation. This true cessation is a freedom in which something has been abandoned, and that something corresponded to this uninterrupted path as the means for attaining it, blah blah blah. But and how did this come about? Because I engaged in a path. And as I said before, the first one of the path that we need to develop first, or what we don't, is this one of renunciation. Like, I want to give this up. So we do that, we entered the path. But the true path is because we've combined that with insight. We say, actually, I can be free. Not only do I want to be free, I've brought about a state of freedom in myself through doing this thing, this path, by engaging it. I brought about a true cessation. I have a liberation of some sort. So let's have a look again. Let's do a brief contemplation. So I just want to, sort of brings about a sense of, we'll see if you can sort of recognize what type of freedom have I just got here when I just did this meditation. So let's give it a go. So again, just get comfortable in the seat. So you can have your eyes closed or open. So whether your eyes are open or closed, there's something that you can see, something that is appearing to you. Something else might be heard, so you're hearing things. You can also smell and taste and touch. Now, everything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch is not you. All of these phenomena that you can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch are called the world. These are our world. These are the objects of our world that we respond to with our seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Now, this knowledge of the world is dependent upon your mind. Try to locate where your mind ends and the world begins. Where does the mind end and the world begin? So just relax into that non-finding. No true mind, no true world, no true finding. And we're just breathe in a little bit more through your nostrils and exhale through your mouth and allow your eyes to flutter open. So here I just want to sort of bring in a little sort of, a little brief cessation. And the cessation here is of the conception of thinking things are true, grasping at what you think are true. And we find that, like I said, you ask this question, it's like, oh my gosh, I thought the world was like right there. And here I am with a mind that's right here. But if we're not the same, then we have to be different and separate. I'm separate from the world. The world is there and I'm here. But if we're separate like that, Miffy, yes.
So just stop the share for a second while you're
Okay, so I'm just going
talking.
to go on now, but I'm going to move to the next thing. So this is one way of using insight.
But I also had a copy. I also had a comment. Eddie, I had this sensation, and I think Venerable Thupten Chodron talked about it, like when you're looking at the fish in the fish tank and you can't actually see the water, but you know the water's there. And I had this sensation like you're looking at the world, you know that you're looking through the veil of your own experience, but it's like the water, you can't actually see it, so you get sucked into the things out there as if they are out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I just like how it makes sense to me, but how do you remember that?
By doing it again and again. Yeah. So we find this.
Is that called meditation?
Yeah, that's right. So this is a way of seeing, there's what we call the world and its objects. The world is the object, and mind, or us, we're the subject. They're not the same, but there's no difference to be found. And that's the thing. We're often going, it's the same or it's different. But it's not same, not different. Because that's one way of purifying the mind using insight. It's this simple question. We just ask a question. The trick, of course, is to find the right questions, but thank goodness the people have gone before us. They've done that. We can just follow along. So if we don't do that, we can also do something else. We can also Just rely on the method aspect of it. And what we want to do overall is combine the method and the insight. So when we do the method aspect, we recognize that we want to purify, we want to prevent what we've done in the past re-arising in the future and causing us the same or worse types of suffering. This is where we bring in the 4 opponent powers. So to stop experiences, so suppose like we've like last week, right? We brought up the thing of abortion. We've killed somebody. So when you kill something, there's a reason for it, and there's the activity of somebody dying, and there's your mind also apprehending the death process. So if you look at that from the point that the sort of thing is, well, I don't want to have something like it happen to me in the future. So the way to stop that is to have this remorse for the suffering that you have caused, and the remorse because you don't want to have this happen to you in the future. So this whole activity has produced what they call a throwing karma. So there's plenty of remedies you can use to stop that. One of them being insight, but there are many, many others too. Like I said so before, we take a life, there's a behavior that runs along with that. So we resolve not to engage in that behavior again. And finally, there's always consequences, effects of our actions. So the effects here, the worst is to take fruition, calling you take rebirth in a lower realm, or as a human being, you experience in terms of killing a short life, a brief life, or having a life that's a lot of problems, particularly sickness and illness. And we find ourselves in environments that are very unfriendly to us. So you think, well, I don't want that to happen either, so what am I going to do? So I'm going to rely upon the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and the mind of enlightenment. And so that way, we put into this place all these sort of obstacles to these effects, or opponents. We oppose the future effects. Okay, so again, I just want to take you again to a very brief contemplation. So again, please just get comfortable where you are. And recollect that you actually do not see the world as it is, but you do see it as you are. We do not see the world as it is, but we see it as we are. Our names and ideas about the world are superimposed by the mind upon what appears to it. So we do not see the world as it is, but as we are, and we superimpose our names and ideas upon the world by what is appearing to the mind. Now, when nothing in the appearance objectively makes it a referent for our terms, if you think about that, there's nothing in the appearance which objectively makes it a referent for our names, then we do not need to cling to our ideas and names as that. When nothing in the appearance objectively makes it a referent for our terms, We need not cling to our ideas and names as that or this. So meaning is not a fundamental function of reality. Meaning is an interpretation superimposed by us, the human observer. So maybe just think about that in the next few days or so. So as you know, this is what I'm sort of getting at. Like, you know, we have objects that we see, smell, touch, taste, think. Nothing in any of those appearances objectively makes them reference for our terms. What's been pointed out here is how we create our reality. As reality doesn't directly appear to our senses, we create it. This is the activity of karma. And if you don't know you're doing it, that's confusion. So when we...
So Eddie, can you just say that sentence again that you said at the end of the meditation about like there's nothing fundamentally the property of those things out there of, was it meaning?
So
There's no fundamental...
Yeah, when appearances arise, we often think they have meaning in themselves. Right? But they don't. Meaning is imposed by us. So meaning is not a fundamental function of reality. It's not out there.
Okay, that's the one. Thank you.
Yeah. So in terms of our purification practice, so in other words, we look at these, the four opponent powers. We bring to a sense of remorse for what was done. There's a remedy, a resolve and a reliance. Well, here in terms of the remedy, remember there is no natural existence of yourself purifying through confession. So this what I mean by this is that when you look for yourself, you're not naturally there. But your self is imposed, is imputed to body and mind. It's not naturally there. So there's no natural sort of person going through this confession. Self is imputed. The action itself, it doesn't take a place. There's no action taking place independent of the person and what had previously been done. And finally, what has been done, there isn't that having been done doesn't truly exist. So again, here I'm just sort of bringing up the idea of trying to bring into the method the insight aspect of it.
Eddie, so this is the like the verse or the little completion at the end of the Vajrasattva practice that Rinpoche gave us, is to contemplate on this at the end of doing the four opponent powers.
Yeah. So again, I just wrote a little thing here, but our time is going by. So I just want to say this. So this was like a contemplation that I'm not quite sure how I got this, but I'll just read it to you so you guys can sort of think about it. So it says that when the appearance grasped as the object is nothing other than the manifestation of the clarity aspect of mind. You guys get that? Do you understand that? So the mind is made up of these two aspects, clarity and knowing. Right? There's no way to apprehend the object without the clarity. So like I said, you don't actually get the objects, you get the objects that appear to your senses. And what's primarily appearing is the mental aspect of the object. So this is the appearance, right? So when the appearance held as the object is nothing other than the manifestation of the clarity aspect of the mind. So for instance, if you're not sure about this, like you could put your hand up in front of yourself like this and go, well, okay, so this object
Dr. Share.
this object that I'm calling here is like the hand, right? So for that hand, this is it's funny. It's like here's something physical, but what's appearing to your mind? Like it can't be the physical. That's an aspect that's appearing to your mind, right?
Is it the meaning of the hand that we think is the hand?
Not necessarily me, but the appearance of hand. So it's the same sort of thing like with houses. You take something big, right? So you look at the house and you go, okay, so what's actually appearing to my mind? You wouldn't say it's the house, it's the aspect of the house, right? Because if the house was there, it'd have to be like inside here somewhere, this big massive thing. But it's not, you know. It's the same thing if you have the house or your hand there and you go like this, you can recollect your hand or the house, right? You look away. That's the clarity aspect. There's a part of the mind also goes, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a house. You go, do you have a house in your mind? You go, well, I've got an image of a house. Right? I know what I'm talking about. Right? So that's the clarity aspect. So, yeah, when we give the definition of mind, its mind is clear and knowing.
Eddie, Lou's has his hand up.
Yep, Lou. Yes, Lou.
I was going to say, could you look at it as a reflection in a mirror?
Yep. Yeah.
Instead of seeing
that,
the
right?
hand, you're seeing its reflection in
Yep,
the clear
in the
mirror
mirror.
of your mind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So the hand that's appearing in the mirror is not the hand that's out here, right? It's like the reflection. And so the mind works like that, and that ability to reflect is the clarity aspect of mind. Thank you, Lou. Yep, that's right. That's what we mean by the clarity, right? So that's where all the objects are actually appearing to us. So the objects are actually nothing other than the clarity aspect. So,
Eddie,
yep.
Eddie, I have a question. I'm sorry, this is Erin.
No, good, Erin, please.
So say something is appearing to my mind, if I just have that appearance,
Yeah.
so that's just the function of mind. But then if I have like a story arising or like the grasping and aversion, is that my karma that's doing that?
Yeah, that's sort of, yeah, that's, you know, the activity of mind, mental factors, all engage with this object of mind that you first put up, right? But all of it is clear, isn't it? All of that is the clarity aspect of mind. But all the appearances are the clarity aspect of mind.
Thank you.
So using the idea of just thinking about things, that's the one, Erin, right? Because I know that like many people, if you put them into what do you call it? What's it called when you put people in jail and you put them in a cell by themselves?
Isolation.
Isolation, right? So isolation, you isolate them in a jail cell like that, or even in isolation tanks. People can go crazy. So what's driving them crazy? you'd say, well, their own mind, isn't it? So all those things that are taking place in the mind, they're not out there beyond the mind. They're taking place, in consciousness or in mind. So that taking place is the clarity aspect. While it's taking place, they also know it's taking place, and that, well, it drives you crazy, right? People say, "Oh, I just want to stop thinking," and you go, "Yeah, I get it. I know what you mean." But the manifestation of the thinking, the appearance of all the thoughts, it's just clear. It's like Lou said, it's like the mirror aspect, right?
So is it kind of like if you're looking in the mirror and you just get so agitated because you're looking at the hundreds of things in the mirror instead of just
right.
kind of chilling
you get
out?
really agitated, right? So that's what we call confusion, right? Thinking that these things are really taking place. Yeah, so they are taking place, like they're appearing, aren't they? And you can see them. You can see all the stuff in the mirror. So that's the same thing with us. So we have a mind that's very much like a mirror. But when it appears, like the difference is the mirror doesn't know. It doesn't know all these things. It just appears to the mirror. But for us, as soon as it appears, we know. And what's called grasp that was that the mind holds these while they appear, and we know them. And people go crazy because they don't want them to appear, and they don't want to know them. They want a bit of freedom from that, a cessation from it. Actually, I think we'll just leave this. We'll just put this example aside. It requires. It's a terrific example, but we're going to go way over time. But this is what we mean by clarity. So this is something to think about. As we're talking about our mind all the time, our mind being the source of our problems and our happiness. What happens is that these appearances arise to mind. So having them, like the words like appearance and arise, have to do with the clarity aspect. It's just like you point out the mirror, right? Unless you shove them in front of the mirror, they're not going to appear in the mirror. But as soon as you shove them in front of the mirror, now they appear in the mirror. So for us, all of the objects that appear to our senses, these we're shoving them in front. And then the mind reflects them. It goes, oh yeah, that tasted like this looks like that. Oh, I thought that. So the clarity aspect is just is a thing, something that holds all these appearances. Yeah, we'll just leave it there, but just something to think about, right? Just how they sometimes talk about the mind. I'm going to finish it off. I'm going to finish it. I don't know whether you understand it or not. I've got to say it. Right? So these are all appearing. And they're just manifestations of this clarity, just like the manifestations in the clarity of the mirror. You go, but they affect you. They affect us, don't they? Just like the person in the jail cell, like all these images appearing to the mind, you become affected by it. Just as if you're sitting there thinking about stuff, you're affected by it. So that which is sort of holding them and being affected is actually empty of any true existence. Because if you look within the mind for a person, there's no person there. There's no person in the mind that's being affected by all these appearances. And there's no person external to the mind being affected by these appearances. So if you understood that deeply enough on a really experiential level, there is no person who created the harm. There's no person to experience the harm. In fact, there's no person even experiencing what's going on here. Anyway, there's something to think about, in terms of this idea when we do our confession prayers, when we engage with the four opponent powers. And Lama Atisha says about this, he said, look, for people who do this for themselves alone, turning away from all the worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions, these persons are said to be of middling capacity. And so is this, for people like ourselves, is this sort of difficult to do? Well, you could say, well, yeah, of course it is. It's not easy. And of course, it's not easy because we're at the beginning. Where I always find myself, it's helpful to consider yourself as a beginner. I'm just beginning. I'm always beginning. Until we actually know we have a path, then we just go, well, now I'm beginning my path. And of course, it's difficult at the beginning. But better to face these difficulties now at the beginning rather than at the end when we can't do a damn thing about it. So I do encourage all of you, just as I continue to encourage myself, yep, it's not easy. But it's not so difficult that I can't even begin. Right? It's not so difficult that I don't understand a damn thing about the Buddha Dharma. I'm confident we can be free. And although I'm not, I'm going to try. And better to try now than make any attempt much later in our life when trying's not going to be of any benefit for you at all. It's too late. So let's begin now and do the very best we can. And we do need to bring about a sense of personal liberation, because without that, we will not be able to understand how to help anyone else become free. And that's what we'll have a look at next week. So what's our takeaway for today? For today, again, a knowledge of renunciation, sort of like a deeper knowledge in a way. We are renouncing karma and delusion. That's what we're renouncing. And we want to do this because we wish to be free. We're seeking freedom. Freedom from karma and delusion and the suffering they produce. And when we have this attitude, this is what we are doing. So if you have any readings at all, like from those books I put up there, there's a lot of material on this in any Dharma book. Teaching, what they call the teachings of the middle scope. These are the teachings on karma, Four Noble Truths, delusions, 12 links of dependent origination, 3 higher trainings. So anything you can read about that, please do. It'll support your understanding. And next week, we're going to have a look and see how this mind that renounces the causes for cyclic existence also supports the mind of enlightenment. So we've come to the end of our class. I just want to say thank you very much. I probably have gone a little bit over time, and I apologize for that. So we're going to dedicate, so I want you to just sort of remember our teachers, the lineage of them all, but in particular Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So for years and years and years, he taught us the importance of giving up suffering and its causes, that a state of freedom existed, and that we should do it not just for ourselves, but for everybody. So let's recollect that and wish that he reappears amongst us again quickly. So let's say this together. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that bond have no decline but increase forevermore. And as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. So, again, we've come to the end of a class. I just want to say thank you, all of you. Nice to see you here, Lou. Yeah, so thanks again, everyone. And let's continue meeting each other and talking about these teachings. Just do the best we can with the lives we have. Okay.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah.